Hello, and welcome to the Environmental Podcasts. We are your hosts and co-founders of Dandelion Branding, Ob and Court. And this is our podcast where we talk about the transition to a more sustainable future and talk with business owners about the incredible innovations that they're coming up with. So super excited for our guest today. We're joined by Josh White, who is the co-founder of CanO Water. Thank you so much for being here.
No, thanks for having me, guys. Great to meet you. Looking forward to this.
Our pleasure. So can you tell us a little bit about how you started this brand? How did you get into canning water?
For sure. So it's a pretty strange story. And I think that I always find it hard when people ask me what I do, because canned water these days is actually, people know about cans of water, but back when we started, it was very alien to a lot of people. Even my own family thought I was very strange. But essentially, in 2014, me and my two best friends went to Thailand just for, a friend's holiday. Had no, expectation of coming out with any business idea. It was literally just purely friend's holiday. And on the trip, we came across huge amounts of plastic pollution on a remote island. And I think that, we don't come from a place where plastic pollution is bad. We come from a place where you might see a plastic bottle on the side of the street, but never like this. And it was brands that we grew up loving, like the Evians and the Coca-Cola brands. And brands are marketed to us as such friendly brands and such like, oh, wow, and I think that it shocked us enormously. It's like, this is the dirty side of business, especially within food and drink. And no one within FMCG was talking about plastic pollution. It was like hidden. It was like the only people that were talking about it were environmentalists that no one really wanted to listen to. It's quite sad. We did a lot of digging. We didn't instantly think, oh, cans are better. We didn't know anything about cans. But what we did is we looked at, it was like a process. We looked at, how is this happening? Why is this happening? We saw how bad plastic was from a recycling perspective, how only 9% of plastic globally was getting recycled. The carbon footprint on glass isn't great, but the on-the-go perspective of glass isn't also great because it smashes and it's heavy, but glass is recyclable. And then you've got Tetra Pak, which looks recyclable, which actually is the worst out of all of them, and it's this like it's like these hidden uglies of no one's really talking about the truth. It's really horrible, actually. But aluminium, which I guess is the best of all evils, in all honesty, because, it isn't. We have a belief as founders that how amazing would it be if the whole world just went over to tap water and tap water was great and didn't have any microplastics in? How amazing would that be? But how unrealistic is it, unfortunately? How many times do people forget their reusable flask? And even though reusable flasks are on the up, so is plastic consumption. It's really bad, So we saw that aluminium was the most recyclable material on the planet. And when you recycle aluminium, it will come back as another can. It will come back as its intended use, which is ultimately what we want. Yeah, we want a loop, a full circle. And the thing that really sold it to us was that 75% of all aluminium produced in the 1800s is just still in circulation. So it's crazy. So your Coke can will become a Red Bull can or a CanO can, or it had such a good story that we were like, why has no one put water in a can? Like, why has no one done it? And the truth is because it's too expensive, which is the reason people love plastic. The big plastic people love plastic. It's so cheap. They make huge margins off of it, all the way from the person that is making it to the people that are selling it, to the people that are buying it. It is literally a false economy. People are making serious money. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been to Europe, but there are some places in Europe that are selling like a bottle of water for like $10 to $15, or it's crazy. They're making huge markups off of water. And I think that another thing is, obviously, you can't reseal a can and you can't see the water. And it was all these things. And I think it needed 3 disruptive lunatics to basically make the decision of, we're going to do it. And we're not going to listen to anyone that tells us that we can't do it, because there was a lot of doubters. And that essentially was how CanO Water was started, and we launched in the biggest department store in the UK as the world's first canned water in
That's
2016.
incredible. And I mean, you're coming up on 8 years. This is 8 years. So that's great. And I'm curious about how your perspective has shifted, and also the role that you play in the transition to a more sustainable future. I think you touched on it a little bit with your disruption. Before we get into that, I'm going to remind our audience to like and subscribe so that you get a notification every single time we have an inspiring guest that you can learn more about. Thank you. And Josh, so yeah.
So I think that it's crazy for me to see. I always talk about this. When we first started CanO Water, I was sampling at a Whole Foods in London, and this elderly lady, she must have been in her 60s, came over to me and asked me for my autograph, and it was one of the strangest things. And I said, like, why are you asking me for my autograph? I'm a nobody. And she said, because I've been speaking about plastic pollution for 30 years. No one's listened. No one cares, like. But you're making a difference. You're making a movement, and I think that we've seen it with like Greta Thunberg, and even with David Attenborough, who isn't young. He's an old guy, and he's dedicated his whole life to this cause. People have listened to him because this was a big turning point, which I'll go into, of how important David Attenborough was to our business, and also things like Seaspiracy and things like that. But essentially, I have seen from the beginning of CanO Water, where people would think that we were crazy, and we'd be at events and we'd hand a can out to someone and people would think that we were mad and they didn't get it, to now where people are given a can and they understand why. I think that I've seen when we came up with the idea to now, it's just been absolutely phenomenal to see the shift. And I think that is the hardest thing. And obviously you're in the US, Courtney, you've seen Liquid Death, obviously, which has been a massive it's funny, I say like Liquid Death wouldn't really be here without CanO, because we started the movement, but also like brands like ours, we were so lonely in a space where we were the only ones doing it for about 5 years, and we need brands like Liquid Death to make noise. It's incredibly important. We're on the same team at the end of the day. And what I hate is brands that go into cans, but they still sell hundreds of millions of plastic bottles. It's like greenwashing at its finest. It's like, oh, we offer a can now. It's just a tick box exercise. It goes against everything that we're about. So brands that have never sold a plastic bottle and that are authentic, like us and Liquid Death, etc., I'm massively for. So I've seen a huge shift in sustainability, and I think that our goal is to remove 1 billion plastic bottles within the next 10 years by selling infinitely recyclable cans, and to inspire other brands and businesses to follow suit. And I think that, I believe solely that we're on the right side of history. I'd hate to be one of the plastic producers at the moment, because you've been hiding for years, and I wouldn't. It's similar with like ultra processed foods. I'd hate to be on that side of the world right now, because we are going into a place where sustainability and health is like super important. I saw a stat the other day that obesity has taken over world hunger globally, which is just crazy. It's crazy, and there needs to be so much more transparency and authenticity. And I think that talking about David Attenborough, we in 2018 we had been pushing the brand for about 3 years, and we weren't really getting anywhere. We had built a bit of traction. We got into like your Whole Foods and your sort of like your boutique department stores in the UK, but we brought in a managing director, and he basically just said, guys, we're running out of money, and we've sold a few 100,000 cans, which in the grand scheme of things is nothing in a few years, but we were getting in the hands of the right people, but we weren't really getting the buy-in from the consumer. And that's the hardest thing, is how do you get the consumer to not think that you're mad? And there was a program by the BBC in the UK called Blue Planet, and David Attenborough, he is the voice of it. And there was one episode where a whale died, unfortunately, of plastic pollution. The whale's baby was like crying. It was a really horrible thing to watch. And overnight, we went from being the biggest fad to being, something that all the businesses in the UK and all the consumers were talking about, this one episode. And we went from about a month away from being bankrupt to selling 12 million cans in 1 year in 2019. So, you talk about the shift of sustainability and consumer, like consumer mentality. So without David Attenborough, like we probably
Right.
would have,
I
we
think that's
probably
true
wouldn't
about a
be
lot of
here.
things. A lot of in the
True.
sustainability world is having the right placement. Like you're saying, you're getting in front of the right people so people know about you. But it takes that extra like push or something that reminds people, "Oh yeah, we all live on this
Yeah,
planet.
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
yeah."
exactly. And one of the greatest things actually that has worked in our favor is now all of the newspapers, whether it be Forbes or the New York Times or the Daily Mail or every newspaper and celebrities are talking about plastic pollution. I mean, the big players still hide behind plastic. They do massively. It's their whole businesses are geared up to it. And people always say that, oh, but what if Evian or Coca-Cola go into cans? Well, they are going to, but they're still going to sell millions of plastic bottles because their whole infrastructure is based around that. All of their bottling plants, all of this, like their whole lives infrastructure is built behind the margins of plastic pollution and this false economy. So that's where brands like they are petrified of brands like us because we come in and tell the truth. That is the reality of what we've done, and I'm super proud to be part of that. And people always ask, like, what makes you get up in the morning? And before starting CanO Water, this wasn't part of my agenda. I would actually argue that I was part of the problem. I'm part of a solution, which I'm super proud of. And the thing that gets me up every day is I'm about to have a kid in a few months. Well, in actually 8 weeks, my first child, which is super exciting. And I want my child to grow up in a knowing that that I was part of something great. And when people are walking around with cans or even not cans, hopefully we're out. Hopefully we're even towards a better solution. But I want to be part of something great, and I want my kids and their kids to know that. And I think that we should all, just like you guys with this podcast, we should all be contributing to just raising awareness and doing great. And that's my purpose for sure.
Yeah. I think that's something we hear reflected a lot in a lot of the business owners that we speak with, both in our work and on the podcast, is that they want their children to be a part of a legacy of something that is a massive shift. In no way can we say that things aren't going to change in the next few years. We are in one of the biggest shifts humanity has ever seen. I was going to say since the Industrial Revolution, but I think that it's bigger this time because there's a lot more at stake. And I really appreciate, I think I said to you before we started recording that we've been connected, and I've definitely followed CanO Water for a long time. I saw you for the first time in the UK. I've been in the Netherlands since 2018. And yeah, I just thought it was I just think it is such a cool idea. And now I just saw that you're having a closure on the can as well. Now, I haven't been able to try it, but does that make it reusable for people?
Yeah, so that's funny enough. That's actually something that
Okay.
we launched with. That was actually our first product in the UK. We've got two different products. We've got one that you can reclose, and then we've got one that's just a normal can. The reason we launched with the reclosure when we first started was because one of the things that we thought was necessary, and one of the things that is necessary when having a bottle of water is, you close it, put it in your bag, and obviously you couldn't do that with a can. It's something that we introduced at the beginning. Funny enough, I think because of the plastic problem and because the awareness of it, it's like people don't necessarily feel the need at times to close, but we offer people the choice. In the US, you have, and you don't have as many of these in the UK, but in the US, you have like aluminium bottles, which is something that, we are just about to launch in California. It's super exciting and something that, we possibly might introduce in the US in the future. But I think that one of the things that's super hard when you start as a business is you're at the constraints of the manufacturer a lot of the time. So one of the things that we didn't have when we launched was cardboard outer cases. All of our packaging came in plastic, and we just couldn't get away from that. You know, we want to be a sustainable brand. We can't get away from that because that's what the manufacturer, that's all they offer. And funny enough, like these were the only manufacturer in the world who would put water in a can. So it's like, oh my God, like we want to be perfect, but we can't, and it's difficult. And one of the things that I push my team with, especially the operations side of things, is like we're a sustainability first company, but when we can, and also like it has to make sense from a pricing perspective as well, because you know, as a business, you can't do something if it isn't going to work financially. But we are a business that does try to put purpose before profit at all means. So we are in the UK, we are in cardboard outer cases, but that took years, you know, and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and it is at an expense. But our whole business has been at an expense. Like we wouldn't have gone into canned water, in all honesty, if we wanted to make loads of money, because the truth is that it costs a lot more to make cans than plastic. So I think that it really is like, it's like this like tug of war, this like push and pull of always trying to be great, but then at the same time, like there is this tug as well. And you know, our lid is a plastic lid. You know, it's not perfect. It's the elephant in the room. You know, that is the truth. But it's a small. It's like to go from here to get to here. And the greatest thing is now there are these aluminium bottles. It's creating a bigger category within that market that hopefully in the next few years we might decide to move away from that lid and go for a fully aluminium reusable bottle, which is the future. And I think that that's synonymous with the brand, is that we aren't like a lot of these big brands where we're sitting in a massive boardroom and it's all these sort of grumpy old people that are like, no, we can't do this. You know, it very much stems from, you know, the co-founders of CanO, and we're always trying to be the best version of us and the best version of CanO.
Yeah, that's cool. And it's so refreshing to hear you talk about being realistic. You're recreating an infrastructure. This is something that we have to iterate over and over and over again. There is no infrastructure for sustainability, and the infrastructure that does exist is created by people like you doing it and pushing and pushing and pushing and saying, no, this is unacceptable, and you know, willing and able to take that expense on, because
100%. I mean, I've seen it over the years with like the whole compostable movement and biodegradable and all these things. And even though like we would love something that just disappeared into thin air, unfortunately, the infrastructure is the most important thing. That is the worst thing with Tetra Pak. So Tetra Pak, in essence, would be if it was just paper, it would be a really, really good material. Okay, well, I don't know how good it would be for the trees, but it would be better than, I guess, plastic. That it wouldn't be here forever. It would be able to be reused, etc., etc. The problem that you've got with Tetra Pak is that it is plastic, paper, and aluminium all fused into one. There's no infrastructure there. Okay, there might be in 40 years, but the amount of hundreds of millions that will need to go into that. And the problem is that you've got a product that's going out into the world, the infrastructure isn't there, and it just will end up in landfill because no one knows how to deal with it. The one thing that the greatest story of aluminium is that the infrastructure is there. It's been there for many, many years. It will just get recycled and it will come back as what it was intended to. And I think the main thing, while we are trying to go into a better and more sustainable world, is that while all these universities and these professors and all these geniuses are working out the best way of how to do X, Y, and Z, we need to protect our planet at all costs, which is what we know. And there's a woman called Sian Sutherland. I don't know if you know her, but she owns a Plastic Planet. She's the most amazing lady. And her thing is just turn the plastic tap off. Like, why are you stop trying to create more mess. We have to turn it off. And if I used to be a heavy smoker when I was a kid, I don't smoke anymore. One of the things that stopped me from smoking was the heavy taxes, the price increases of cigarettes, the constant livers and horrible messages on cigarettes that made you think like, oh my God, this really, really isn't for me. And that stopped a very heavy smoker from smoking. And I think we have to do the same thing with, I'm a firm believer that it isn't me. And this is my belief. I don't believe that it's the consumer's problem. I believe that it is the people that are making it and the government, and they need to sort it out themselves.
Yep. I totally agree. The businesses, the creators, consumers, we say, you know, I'm on a road trip. I forgot my bottle, or, you know, I need water, or I'm caught out somewhere. This happened to us the other day. We were caught out. We were gone for way longer than we were supposed to be gone for. Like, we're thirsty, you know? If the only option is plastic, the only option is plastic. Let's have more options. Let's have better options. And when we don't have better options, we should tax it, and we should be able to like force the creators to pay for cleanup, right?
Completely agree. Definitely.
But at the same time, it's interesting though that you said like that some of that kind of the messaging that was on packs of cigarettes did work to open your eyes as a consumer. So like, I think that there's a balance also of like kind of being honest about the scary truth if we continue in the way that we're going, and like there is still a need to educate a wider consumer base,
if you had on the side, I actually saw the other day that some places in Europe have like warning signs on ultra processed foods, which is super interesting. So like on like cereals and stuff, where it'll basically say like, because you know the small print is how bad it is for you on the back, and you can't just expect every kid to look at the ingredients, even though we are definitely going into a place where people are becoming more aware. Imagine on the side of a plastic bottle it said this is going to kill 1,000 fish. Do you know what I mean? It's like that is that reality. It should have a warning sign. We've actually just introduced on the back of our US cans, on our boxes in the UK, there's a big red warning sign that says caution, you may not want to drink from a plastic bottle anymore. So it's something that we've it's something like it's a bit of a warning sign, but I just think that it's something that needs to come from above, like from the government. It really, really has to.
I'm just thinking like, you know, all of the water bottles that have the like beautiful pristine mountains on it, that if they could come down, that those photos now have to have like just plastic trash all over that mountain, and that's what they sell.
Of course.
Exactly.
Definitely. I mean, that's probably what will happen to that mountain one day.
And they should take all the snow off of it too, of course.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Do that while you're at it. Yeah, exactly.
It's a challenge to get, I guess, some of those laws kind of put in place though, right? Like that it takes.
Yeah. And do you know
working with nonprofits? Or?
Yeah, do you know what? It's funny. Like, not. Do you know? I've worked with a lot of nonprofits, and some of them are really, really great. Some of them take big money from Coca-Cola, which is just absolutely mental. And obviously, I'm sure you guys saw that COP27 was funded in the UAE by Coca-Cola, which is just absolutely pathetic and baffling. And it just shows you how like small-minded a lot of these people are, and how money really sort of money does make a big difference. And one thing I can tell you as a small brand, like that is one of the biggest challenges, is when you're up against these businesses that don't care at all, but they have more money. It's really sad. One of the things that I'm super proud of is like this disruptive mentality that we've got at CanO Water. So like we will out people, and you know, we did something the other day where we posted like flyers all over London basically saying cans over plastic, over like a plastic bottle ad, and we would do like very hijacky disruptive stuff to sort of make people aware, because what we've learned is that like the only way to make a difference and the only way to get people to hear you is to just make noise. Just make as much noise as possible. You know, like Liquid Death, and what we do is that like you're never ever going to make noise if you just sort of just put pictures of mountains and pictures of your product up on, you know, like we want to hijack big events. One thing that I'm super proud of in the UK is at Wimbledon, when they renewed their contract with Evian, we got a big electric van with a massive TV screen on the side of it, and it basically said, Wimbledon, are you stuck in a toxic relationship? And underneath there underneath there was a phone number, and it was a helpline to help people break up the plastic. And when you called up the helpline, it was a voice which basically was sort of like, Wimbledon, are you like, it was like a whole thing about it was like an open letter to help Wimbledon break up the plastic. So like, you know, these are the types of things that, you know, these are the types of things that we're doing. And you know, these are the things that we're super proud of, because have to make noise. Otherwise, these people with their greenwashing, unfortunately, they will just get away with it. And this is what's happened and what will happen. So that's what I am proud
of. As you should be. I'm proud of you too. It's as fun and it's funny and it's it gives people enough of a jolt to think about it.
For sure.
You know, without pissing them off. Is where you piss people off, they dig their feet in.
No, for sure.
And then you can't get anywhere.
Yeah. It's about doing it tastefully, and you know, humor is really, really important. And I think that, you know, you're right. We don't want to do anything that sort of like, we've never thought of ourselves as like plastic bashers. Like we're not the guys that are just sort of like, do you guys know about Just Stop Oil? I'm sure you know, like, these guys, even though they're doing it for a good cause, they can be very, very disruptive. And in the UK, they've got more negative press than positive press, and difficult because how do you get heard? And sometimes you have to do certain things to get heard. But at the same time, like, if you're annoying all the consumers and someone can't get to the hospital for their treatment, it's what I was saying before about that tug of war. It's so difficult, but I think humor is one way that you can really. It's like It's like stand-up comedy. It's like, I find that for me personally, I find that stand-up comedy is, we're all together in a room where sometimes people can be really offensive, but we all know that we're in there together and we can laugh together at that. And when you leave, it definitely is not acceptable outside of that room, only with certain comedians. I think some comedians have definitely taken it too far. But I think that comedy and humor is definitely a way to do it tastefully, for sure.
It unites people too.
People trust
it brings
more
people
when
together.
they can
Definitely.
laugh. I was just having this conversation earlier today of like bringing people, and this was a kind of a like internal discussion of like how to help people build trust within a team. But it's always the same. You laugh together and you work through something together, and I feel like you laugh together and then you learn something.
Definitely. No, I agree. And do you know what the funniest thing is? And I always say to my team, like, come to me with any idea. Like, no idea is a bad idea. Like, even if it's like so off the mark, you can always go. And funny enough, like, whenever we have creative brainstorms, a lot of it comes from humor and being silly. You know, it's quite funny. It's like, I've done talks at some big corporate companies, and I not only once but twice I've had people come over to me and be like, "Oh, I wish I could work for you," because like where we work, like, everything's so serious and no one listens to us. And it's like, I think like big corporate companies, sometimes they get to a place where like they forget why they started, or they don't have the best culture. And I think that it's just super important that every single person in the business can think creatively and think. I would hate it if one of my team members thought that they couldn't sort of come to me with like one of their fun or creative, silly, whatever it is, ideas, because a lot of the time it just sort of comes when you're in the shower or when you're just doing something straight. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter where it is or when it is, but no idea is a stupid idea. And even if it's silliness is the greatest things can come
even
from
if it doesn't start great, it starts from a great place, and then you can work with it, workshop it, make it.
Exactly. Teamwork.
I think that's a really beautiful place to pause. I think we could talk to you for a really long time about guerrilla marketing and having a lot of fun with your team. You sound like a really fun person to work with and for. So where can people connect with you? Where can they find you?
So social media, at CanO Water, on LinkedIn. So I get a lot of messages on LinkedIn. So just through my name, Josh White. obviously at CanO Water or www.canowater.com. In the UK, people can buy CanO Water, from most major sort of retailers, Ocado, which is a big online retailer that we just launched on, as well as Amazon. And then in the US, nowhere yet, but we are launching in California in the next few months. So you'll be able to hopefully find us in some sort of small independents in LA, which would be really cool. But yeah, it's hopefully worldwide in the next, in the next 10 years and forever growing.
You think it will be? Thank you so much, Josh, for joining us.
Thank you, guys. No, thank you.
See you next time.
Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we will talk to you next time.